Joining us next is British Chamber of Commerce's Chris Nelson for our monthly chat. Chris, welcome back and congratulations on a family milestone.
Well, yes, thank you very much. Good morning and thank you. Yeah, our daughter got married 19th of August in the UK.
Congratulations.
So, again, cementing UK-Philippine relations.
There you go. Chris, I want to start with big news over the weekend. Higher for longer rate mantra of central bankers at Jackson Hole, including Bank of England. I mean, your Deputy Governor Ben Broadbent said interest rates in Britain might have to stay high for some time yet, because the knock-on effects of the surge in prices, such as pressure on employers to raise wages, which has led to record growth in pay, were unlikely to fade away as rapidly as they emerged. How does this impact the sentiment among your investors?
So if you look across the world, you're right. I mean, obviously, the US Fed rate is currently, I believe, 5.25. And of the indications are probably a pause, as most people were expecting, but obviously the question that the Federal Reserve Chairman did was to obviously indicate that it could go, that inflation is a key factor. Now, in terms of our investors, and you rightly reported, of course, the Bank of England is currently also put up interest rates recently up to another 0.25. I think that overall what we're looking here is that inflation, particularly in the US, has moderated, and that was noted. And that's what everybody's looking for across the world. In terms of investors, it is a concern. However, they're also looking at opportunities, and the Philippines represents that opportunity. And in that context, I think the fact that the Philippines joined RCEP was a very important factor, because that allows UK companies to come in and therefore with an opportunity to invest and be trading across the very world, largest trade bloc. So in summary, Mimi, yes, it's a concern. We personally think the interest rates will probably hold. Obviously, all the central banks are very concerned on inflation, but I think investors are still looking for that growth opportunity overseas, and the Philippines remains a key market.
And I'm sure that you're looking at growth opportunities in the property space, because the British Chamber actually hosted your Property Matters Forum. This happened last week. If you could just give us a sneak peek, what are the key takeaways from your Properties Forum last week, and give us a sense of the participation of UK companies in the uptake of space here in Manila?
Sure. So it was our 7th property forum. We've consistently done that. We had 3 of the leading companies giving presentations. That was Colliers, Santos Knight Frank, and Jones Lang LaSalle, JL. And I think, first of all, Colliers referred to the fact that in the Philippines, while there is still significant office space, it's actually starting to come down. So that's a good indication. And they actually see opportunities in premium sector buildings going forward. And for them, actually, there is growth outside. They specifically mentioned Pampanga, Cagayan de Oro, Davao. For Santos Knight Frank, they presented a very interesting study on the working environment, because, of course, workspace is a very key factor. And that was very important. And they emphasized that while hybrid is here as a working concept, there is a slow but steady return in the Philippines. And the key question will then be is, how do they see that workspace going forward? Probably more from collaboration, from team leadership or team working together, but there is that growth. I should also mention that there is an increase or a growth opportunity or interest in the mid-price sector of the residentials. And then for JL, they actually focused on how artificial intelligence will be an overall boost to the property sector. So UK companies are interested. Both Santos Knight Frank and JL are both British companies. And I think there is an outstanding interest in the Philippines. And obviously the property sector, real estate, contributes 6% to the overall economy and is a good indicator. So I think in summary on the takeaways, office space, yes, there are still obviously space availability, but it's starting to come down, which is a good indicator. On the residential side, growth in the mid-price sector. For Santos Knight Frank, of course, we're seeing a move back into the office, and artificial intelligence will support all this, and obviously the continued growth of the BPO sector.
Okay, from property, we know that UK companies also play a very big role when it comes to pork supply in the Philippines. And the chamber, you guys are supporting for an extension of EO10, which lowered the tariffs for some staples like rice, corn, and pork. How critical is this, and how confident are you that the president will extend this EO when it expires next year, right?
It expires at the end of this year. Look, I think it's a very critical factor. Food inflation, food supply is a key thing that was noted by your previous speaker. As we've seen, pork exports from the UK have risen significantly in 2022. It was up to 34,000, up over 34%. What we're seeing as well is this is assisting in terms of inflation. And we think that's a key point. And I think that the president will look at lower tariffs. I would also like to just mention at this particular point as well, the importance of passing the Anti-Agricultural Smuggling Act, something noted in the Senate, because we want to see that also strengthen the overall agricultural sector, which will help. So we are confident. We've just had two of the largest importers go to the UK. One of our partners was here for the World Food Expo, which was on the 2nd to the 5th of August. And the interest of UK companies to assist in supplying pork and beef to the Philippine market is extremely strong. There will be challenges, but we're confident, and we would strongly endorse the extension of EO10, which, as you rightly pointed out, currently will conclude at the end of this year. And we're hopeful, and we obviously recommend that it's extended throughout and continue into obviously 2024.
All right, because pork forms a pretty substantial, significant part of our trade. We know that total trade in goods and services between our two economies for the 4 quarters ending in Q1 this year totaled 2.6 billion pounds. That's up 32%. I wonder what's the outlook, the visibility for our trade, considering both our economies are slowing significantly. You guys dodged a recession last year, but many are saying you might not get so lucky this time around and might actually go into recession. The Philippines also significantly slowing. So what's the outlook for our trade numbers?
So first of all, thanks for noting that. It's actually an all-time high, 2.6 billion. So that shows great work of both sides. So it's exactly equal between both countries, 1.3 billion each. And all credit to the Department of Trade and Investment here, and obviously for our business and trade department, which we work with on the British Embassy side. I think the prospects still remain very good. The UK economy grew about 0.7. It did just start to get growth. The Philippine economy, yes, and that's been noted. The GDP number was lower than anticipated for the previous quarter. It's 4.3%, if I recall correctly. But what we see is there are opportunities. I think, obviously, investments in infrastructure. I think the UK company was mentioned also. I think you made a reference to Meralco and renewables. The UK is very interested in renewable energy. Let's not forget there was a visit of Secretary Pascual with the Philippine Investment Roadshow in Europe, but obviously stayed and went to London. So I think while there are challenges, one of our key issues, Mimi, is to continue to highlight to UK companies opportunities, and also to Philippine companies. Let's not forget we've just launched the Developing Countries Trading Scheme, and that is going to be very important. That tariff scheme is going to be much beneficial. So I think we'll work with the Department of Trade and Industry, Trade and Investment, Trade and Industry here on those issues. So yes, challenges, but we've continued to see growth. And as you've noted, 2.6 is another high, despite the challenges and the growth, the inflation issues, and obviously some of those factors coming through, and yet we still managed to grow to a new high. But
imagine how high the jump in that number would be once an FTA gets signed, right?
I know, and I appreciate your consistency and coming back on this. And I just want to say that the UK has noted and will continue to work, and I think looks to continue to develop. I just had a recent discussion with Ambassador Lord Beaufils, and I believe the UK is continuing to move forward, whether we'll get to that FTA. But I think the cooperation between the Philippines and the UK is at an all-time high, will continue to grow. And we've seen that, and I just say it's great to see the fact that we've hit all-time high of 2.6 billion.
All right. On that note, thank you very much, Chris, for joining us. Always a pleasure speaking with you.